It's Friday Coffee with your mortgage man, Eric. Here we go. And today we're going to talk about some things that have been coming up recently here in the last month, I would say. Some frustrations. And I think I've talked on this before. And if I was honest with everyone, I would say, 90% of all the frustrations or issues that come up in processing or underwriting a loan has to deal with the assets part of the equation, right? Because generally we have the credit and the credit scores and the income and the income allocation, the debt versus income ratios. All that is usually taken care of well in advance, and it comes down to the assets part of it. Transferring the assets from one account to another, the portfolio, retirement, 401k, 403bs, IRA accounts into your checking and savings. And that really can become a frustrating issue. So if you can follow me here and try to understand this. So when you're purchasing real estate, all the monies, all the proceeds used for a real estate transaction in this country have to be documented. Why is that? U.S. Patriot Act, all the policies regarding terrorists and Interpol and the RICO Act and human trafficking and all of those issues land in real estate, believe it or not. And yes, I know you're not a terrorist and you're not a human smuggler or a drug smuggler. I get that. But they have to treat everyone the same way, every transaction the same way when it comes to real estate. So what that means is your monies, your assets that are being used for the real estate transaction are going to be looked at with heavy scrutiny. They have to be documented, or what we call paper trailed to a T. So, and here's where the biggest issue comes up, I think, in my opinion, is when you are taking monies from like I said, a 401k, a retirement account of some sort, Roth IRA, any type of portfolio account that you need to transfer into the checking and savings, it can get messy. And the mentality is, and look, I understand why people think this. Well, hey, you see that I got $110,000 in my 401k. That should be enough for you, right? I mean, you know where the money's come from. Yeah, you and I know where the money's come from. Absolutely. But we have to paper trail, document the transfer of monies from that account into your checking and savings, which is where you'll write your cashier's check or get your wire transfer from. What would make this easier is if those portfolio retirement accounts would allow you to transfer monies from there right into your escrow. Oh my goodness gracious. That just doesn't happen though. They will not do that. You have to transfer the monies from those portfolio accounts into checking and savings. And then checking and savings into escrow, right? So those transactions are usually taking place 2-3 weeks prior to the close of escrow, unfortunately. And that's where the frustrations begin. So hang on with me here. Typically it's a quarterly statement. Occasionally you have monthly statements when it comes to your portfolio accounts. I think Edward Jones does monthly. I think the majority of everyone else does quarterly. So first off, we need your most recent quarterly statement. If it's not quarterly, we need your last 2 months of statements. That is cycled monthly statements in their entirety, all pages. If it says, 1 of 4, well then we need 2 of 4, 3 of 4, and 4 of 4. Well, why do you need page 4 of 4, Eric? It's blank. Well, we don't know it's blank, right? Until we get it. It's just a standard condition you're going to have in my industry. All pages of that. So we're in end of February right now, so I would be asking for your last quarterly statement from 2019, which would be October 1st through December 31st. So now let's say the customer, the consumer, the home buyer is transferring monies out of that particular account, 401k, Roth IRA, mutual funds, whatever that portfolio account is. And that happens, let's say, yesterday, right? February the 25th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 7th, 27th. And so now we've got to go back and capture that transaction in question. What does that mean? Here's where it really starts to get frustrating for the consumer. and rightfully so, but we try to walk you guys through this. So now I need a daily transaction printout from the date your last statement, quarterly statement or monthly statement cycled, which was what? December 31st, right? So now I need the daily transaction printout from December 31st all the way through present day, February 27th. And on that printout, things have to happen. It has to show in the average or the daily running balance, the running daily balance. 2, it has to have the URL. What's the URL? It's just a fancy word for website address. Typically, the URL is going to be at the bottom. Sometimes they are at the top, but it has to capture the URL as well. Some browsers, such as Safari, won't capture the URL. So then there's that frustration. Well, here, Eric, here's the printout. Oh, it doesn't have the URL. Are you kidding me? Try a different browser, right? You can see where this back and forth, it starts to get frustrating for the customer. So it also needs to have at least a partial account number at the top, on the sides, wherever, so we can identify that that account belongs to you, right? So there are some things that have to happen. So the frustrations do tend to escalate there. One of the couple things that I do to help my customers out is, look, I'll log into your account. If you feel comfortable giving me your username and password, and I would say about half of my clients do, let me log into your account. I'll get what's needed, and I'll get it in about 2 to 3 minutes. After the fact, you can change your password, right? We're done. And keep in mind, I'm licensed, bonded, insured. You know, why you would think I would do anything nefarious with your accounts? I would lose my career, right? I mean, so keep that in mind. I also have clients that will come into my office and hop on my computer. I'll put them right at my desk, right in my chair, hop on my computer, pull up your account if they don't feel comfortable giving me their username and password, and then I'll kind of walk them through it. Or they'll log in and say, okay, I've logged in, here you go, and then I'll take care of it. If one of those two things can happen, it'll be done in minutes, opposed to back and forth, frustrations. I don't understand why you need this. I don't understand why isn't that printout good enough. And then follow me here. So now you've got me the daily transaction printout from the retirement or the portfolio account from where the monies came from, and now you put it in checking and savings. Now we've got to get a printout on the checking and savings part. Look, we got to document those funds. If you can picture yourself being investigated by the FBI for money laundering or whatever, some serious crime where they're going to follow every penny that came into your account, that's basically what underwriting is going to do with your assets in the purchasing of real estate in the United States of America. Keep that in mind. So now, right, we need to print out on the checking and savings. Got to have from the date the last monthly statement cycled. So let's call it January 31st, the present day, February 27th. Running daily balance, URL at the top or the bottom, partial account number somewhere on that statement. If you can't get that, sometimes if you go into the local bank, well, now you're making a trip, right? Is that worth it? 15 minutes there, standing in line. I mean, you could spend an hour to get bank statement printouts at your local bank, and then they got to stamp them, and then you're going to scan them or fax them to me, when you could have just given me your username and password, and again, I'm done in 2 minutes. So just keep that in mind. I guess this is kind of just setting the groundwork, right? I mean, I think everybody's probably heard of some horror stories out there that happens with the processing and underwriting of loans. And I really prepare my buyers and borrowers, if they're refinancing, up front, what this is going to look like, what I will need, what that will entail. And to get the initial pre-approval out on someone, all I need is a copy of your your portfolio account. Hey, Eric, the down payment's coming from our Charles Schwab account. Got 110,000 in. Here's a copy of it, or even a printout. Great, we're pre-approved. I know where it's coming from. But when the rubber starts to meet the road and we're in underwriting, we're going to need, right, the statement, the full monthly or quarterly statements. We're going to need the printouts. We're going to have to document the activity where those, the withdrawal and the deposits that came, where they came from. Definitively, to a T, they're going to have to be documented, or what we call paper trailed. So I would say 90% or greater of the frustrations, at least for my loans in my career, 20-year plus career, that's where they come from. It's not all the other stuff. Like I said, all the other stuff we nip in the bud before we even give you a pre-approval. Debt versus income ratios, credit scores, time on the job, right? Commission and bonuses, and all of those things that can also throw a loan transaction sideways. They're taken care of 95% of the time in advance. It's the transferring of assets. So keep that in mind. That's all I have for you today. Hopefully it's a shorter video, and just trying to educate and get that out on the majority of the frustrations and what we can do to curtail that. The only other thing I can think of that you could do to curtail that is if you knew you were going to buy a home in the coming months, right? You would transfer those monies now into the checking and savings. It'll make it easier for you, at least a little easier for you. That doesn't happen. That just really doesn't happen. And then if you're getting money from the 401k, you can't get money from the 401k until you give them a purchase contract. Like if you're taking a loan from your 401k, sure, you can liquidate it and then you deal with penalties, et cetera, et cetera. But so that's really hard to do, is to try to be forthcoming and transfer monies out of your portfolio account months ahead of time in advance. That just doesn't happen. I guess you, in theory, could, to rid of some of the frustrations that may come. Otherwise, just be prepared. And if you feel comfortable, like I said, about 50% of my clients just say, Eric, and they'll text me. They'll just text me their username and password. Eric, here it is. Let me know when you're out. I'll change the password. We're done. 2 minutes, 3 minutes, we're done. And then there's no frustrations that the borrower or the buyer has had. With that said, it's Friday Coffee with your mortgage man, Eric, 602-757-2171.